Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Remy Roth.
In our top story, Israeli and Palestinian leaders met in Washington, D.C. last week for the first round of renewed peace talks. PA leaders begrudgingly ended a 3-year stalemate in negotiations only after the Israeli cabinet approved the release of 104 convicted terrorists. They issued a list of extreme demands to be met if they were to continue the negotiations. The PA representative to the United Nations stated last week that they will meet only on the basis of the pre-1967 borders, with Jerusalem as their capital. And PA leader Mahmoud Abbas said that he would not agree to allow even one Israeli citizen to live within the borders of a future Palestinian state. Remy Roth has more on that story.
Yes, Yochanan, the Palestinians are demanding that the establishment of a future state be based on the 1967 borders. This means that they are effectively insisting on the eviction of major Israeli population centers. Abbas's statement that he would not see the presence of a single Israeli on Palestinian lands demonstrates the truly unreasonable demands they are making on Israel. There are about 2 million Israeli Arabs living within Israel, the majority of whom insist on remaining in Israel if there is a Palestinian state created. Israel is being pressured to forcibly remove its citizens from their homes, from the heartland of the biblical covenant, and to withdraw to indefensible borders. The Palestinians are also demanding to make the old city of Jerusalem, the holiest place in Judaism, their capital, and in effect to exile the Jews from their holy city once again.
As the Obama administration pressures Israel to capitulate to the Palestinians, a Jewish American legal group has sent U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry a letter which clearly explains that forcing Israel into negotiations based on the pre-1967 lines is in violation of agreements made by previous U.S. presidents. The Legal Forum for Israel quoted a letter written by former U.S. President George W. Bush, which read, "As part of a final peace settlement, Israel must have secure and recognized borders, which should emerge from negotiations between the parties in accordance with UN Security Council Resolutions 242 and 338. In light of new realities on the ground, including already existing major Israeli population centers, it is unrealistic to expect that the outcome of the final status negotiations will be a full and complete return to the armistice lines of 1949, and all previous efforts to negotiate a two-state solution have reached the same conclusion." A majority of the U.S. House of Representatives also agreed with this sentiment at the time. The Obama administration has tried to distance itself from this position and has pushed an agenda of forcing Israel to retreat from the biblical heartland of Judea, Samaria, and its capital, Jerusalem.
In response to the European Union's illegal boycott of Israeli institutions in Judea and Samaria, the Israeli Defense Minister has ceased cooperation with the European Union. Moshe Ya'alon has instructed the Israeli Defense Forces and the coordinator of the government affairs in Judea and Samaria to stop cooperating with the European Union representatives. The IDF generally assists in the EU in transportation, security, and with infrastructure projects in Judea and Samaria. A source in the defense establishment said the EU boycott of Israel institutions in these areas turned the organization into a biased mediator in negotiations, and as such, it must accept the results. As of now, all cooperation between Israel and the EU in Judea and Samaria has ceased.
In an attempt to counter the anti-Israel directives being approved by the European Union, The Israel Allies Foundation has appointed a new European director. Andres Patkai will be tasked with heading the European Union operations of the Israel Allies Foundation in Brussels. His position will help to streamline the activities between the 8 existing Israel Allies caucuses in Europe and the Knesset Christian Allies caucus in Israel. He said it seems that the EU unashamedly targets the only country in the region that has similar democratic values to its own, namely political diversity, the rule of law, respect for human rights, as well as shared geopolitical interest. Of all people, Europeans know best that the Jews have a historical and legal right to be in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria.
A Bulgarian newspaper has published evidence inexplicitly linking Hezbollah to the terrorist attacks in Burgas last July. 5 Israelis were killed when the Islamic terrorists targeted a bus of Israelis vacationing in Bulgaria. The suspects have been identified by Bulgarian authorities as Hussein Hussein and Hassan el-Hajj Hussein. Bank records revealed that Hezbollah wired $100,000 to the terrorists in the months before the deadly attack. The 2 men were reportedly recruited and given explosives training in the Hezbollah stronghold of Beirut in 2010.
Israeli Americans lost a huge battle last week when a federal appeals court ruled that U.S. passports cannot list Israel as the country of birth for citizens born in Jerusalem. The panel overturned a previously approved law that allowed U.S. citizens born in the Holy City to list Israel as their country of birth. The anonymous panel of judges ruled that only the President of the United States has the authority to say that Jerusalem is part of Israel. This law affects about 50,000 American citizens born in Jerusalem who wish to list Israel as their country. Abraham Foxman, director of the Anti-Defamation League, said, "All other American citizens born abroad may choose to list a city or area of birth instead of a country."
Syria is becoming a hub for global jihad. According to the IDF Chief of Intelligence, Syria is drawing thousands of global jihad activists and radical Muslims from the regions and the world who are establishing bases in the country not only to overthrow the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, but also to promote the vision of an Islamic State. Avi Koavi warned that right before our eyes, a center of global jihad is developing on a scale that may affect not only Syria and the borders of Israel, but also Jordan and the Sinai.
Israeli doctors performed life-saving surgery on a 3-year-old Syrian girl last week. The girl and her mother were brought to Safed Hospital by the IDF. Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon recently released a statement saying that the IDF had created a field hospital on the Israeli border with Syria. Hundreds of wounded Syrians have come to the field hospital seeking medical attention since the start of the Syrian civil war. Those severely injured are transferred to hospitals inside Israel. For their safety, Israel has kept their identities secret to protect them from retaliation by the Syrian government for collaborating with Israel. More than 100 Syrians have been treated in Israeli hospitals and hundreds more at the field hospital. The Syrian civil war has claimed the lives of 100,000 people, mostly civilians, over the past 2 years.
The Jewish Coalition for Disaster Relief has donated more than $100,000 to the Syrian refugees encamped in Jordan. The donation, coordinated by the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, was given to the Jordanian Red Crescent as well as several other humanitarian organizations operating in the Syrian refugee camps in the Hashmonite Kingdom.
The Israeli Ministry of Absorption has excitedly announced that more than 1,000 children from North America will make Aliyah this year. Nefesh B'Nefesh, an organization which assists North American Jews to immigrate to Israel, hosted their first ever children's Aliyah flight, which landed in the Holy Land last week. 106 children officially moved to Israel that day, along with their parents. Nefesh B'Nefesh estimates that 2,500 North Americans will immigrate to Israel this summer. Tony Gelbert, the co-founder of Nefesh B'Nefesh, said, "As we welcome our 35,000th immigrant, it is exciting to see so many children among the Zionistic modern-day pioneers who are helping to build and secure the future of the State of Israel. This new generation is joining young adults volunteering for the Israeli Army and immigrants moving to Israel's north and south to help strengthen and infuse the country with renewed passion and idealism."
That concludes the news portion of our show today. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in yet another beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Dr. Ronnie Wexler, CEO of Heritage Study Programs Foundation. Dr. Wexler, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Wexler, tell our viewers a little bit about what is the Heritage Study Program Foundation.
The Heritage Study Programs Foundation is an organization that brings people to Israel to show them what Israel is all about. It is not a regular tour to Israel, it is a tour that mingles with the local Israelis, with people of government, with people of education, with people who actually make this country move.
You know, it's interesting. You're an Israeli, you live in America, you're Jewish, yet primarily you work with Christians. Why is that the community that you chose to work with, and how is that different from what maybe some of your colleagues do?
I felt very early in my years that we in Israel really do not understand what Christianity is all about. To us, all Christians are the same. So I decided to go and study, and I did study, and I got my degree in theology. So to go and understand what makes a Christian understand better Israel was to understand Christianity and really get to know what this is all about. At the same time, it was very important for me to educate Israelis and tell them what Christians are all about. So through a study program that I developed that became accredited by many universities and colleges, we are able to bring people to Israel with a higher degree of education.
So you bring groups here and you do study programs here in the land of Israel. There are many organizations that do similar things. What makes your program so unique?
I think being an Israeli, born in Israel, serving in the army, fighting in 2 wars in Israel, having all my friends here, living basically in the States and in Israel, allow me to come together and bring my groups as a family to other family, my own and others, in Israel. For instance, we go into private homes and we celebrate Shabbat. For instance, we go to an army camp and we celebrate Shabbat evening with soldiers. So this is something entirely different than anybody else does. Not that other groups aren't good, but I think we bring something extraordinary here, and people, when they get out of Israel, they become messengers of goodwill, of which I don't believe they could become without the understanding of what Israel is all about through the personal connections.
You know, one of the things that you do that's very unique is that you work with groups from the Caribbean. You've partnered with Dr. Miles Monroe and several other Christian leaders in the Caribbean, and you're bringing the Caribbean Christian community to Israel. Why is that so important for Israel itself?
I think that one thing I learned just before the 6 Days War, which was the war I participated, that Israel doesn't have too many friends. And for me to bring friends to Israel and to really make them feel that this is their country as well, was to go through my good friends, Dr. Miles Monroe. I'm a trustee on the Third World International Association, and not only get people from the Caribbean, but from the entire world. As you know, we had just a few weeks ago a group from Papua New Guinea. They came from the other side of the world just to be here. We have people from South Africa, we have people from the Caribbean. In just a short while, we're going to have a group from Trinidad and Tobago. So I do go to these places, and I go on television, just like this program, and I talk and I explain what this is all about. And when they understand that they come to Israel not only to learn the Bible, which they do, but also to get involved in the process, government, seeing members of parliament, being at the Knesset, being at your office. This is something that I feel brings friends to Israel, and more than once, as you know, people ask for bilateral agreement with their government to their association with their governments.
You know, you go to these places like Papua New Guinea, Trinidad and Tobago, all over the world. Why do you think the Christian community loves Israel so much?
I think that when you see on media things about Israel, and you know that the Bible is true, you start to doubt it. These people, when they come to Israel, they really know the truth. As I heard from you, there are two different sides to this. This is not a political issue here. This is not even land. This is really philosophical idea. Whether they are right, meaning the Muslims, or we are right, meaning the Jews and the Christians. So when they come to Israel, I think they really want to find out what is the truth. And if we are so progressive, And we're making things happen in Israel in the way we do. And they get to see the people who make it happen. I think this is why they want to come. And they repeat. I have people from Papua New Guinea, so far away, that are here for the fourth time, and as well from other places in the world.
Well, that brings another important aspect. A lot of things that you're doing here are also connected to politics in a way. You have conferences with people like Daniel Pipes, but you also bring Christian leaders to meet with Knesset members, things to that effect. Why is that biblical and political connection so important to you?
I think that when we talk about desert bloom and prophecy coming to fruition, I think part of it is what Israel has to offer the world. And as I said before, we need a lot of friends. I think through Israeli technology, we bring these friends to really help Israel. So to me, this is a personal calling. This is a mission that I have. For me, the groups of Israel is not only to study the Bible and to authenticate maybe the history in the Bible, but it is really to create history. I bring people to Israel so they can understand where they belong. When they go back home, they're messengers of goodwill. When they go home, they talk about Israel, unlike the general media that they see on whatever media they watch.
There are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Come to Israel with anybody, but do go to the website and look at the Heritage Study Programs Foundation. You will find a tour for you to Israel, and that will connect you to Israel on a Zionist basis. You'll come back the way you never dreamed possible. You'll plant a tree in Israel, you'll meet with my friends, you'll go to army camps, you'll go to Israeli homes, and when you go back, you really understand Israel.
Thank you, Dr. Wexler, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Those who dreamed about the Jewish state, those who wrought the historical miracle, and against all odds established a state. Those who arrived in the homeland to their new home, those who propelled Israel forward step after step.
I have no doubt that this expanded partnership with our many Christian supporters will greatly strengthen Israel in the years ahead. And I want to thank you all for being part of that historic effort and that historic partnership. May God bless all of Israel's friends throughout the world. May God bless you.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
There's a new role for man's best friend. Now dogs can also be man's savior when it comes to dealing with the onset of Alzheimer's disease. That's the mission of the canines enlisted in the Alzheimer's Aid Dogs Project, a program that pairs up people suffering from the disease with four-legged caregivers. The dogs are trained to alert others if their owner is in distress, call for help, or simply find them and lead them home if they get lost. Yehuda was the pilot patient for the program. He has had his dog Bella for 11 years.
לי ולאשתי זה נתן שקט. זאת אומרת שיכולתי לצאת בלי פחד שאני אהיה לאיבוד. והיא כל כך חכמה שנותנת חשק, הרבה חשק להתמודד.
The project is the brainchild of Daphna Golan Shemesh, a social worker with expertise in caring for Alzheimer's patients, and her partner, Yariv Ben Yosef, a professional dog trainer. 12 years ago, they came up with the idea of giving people diagnosed with Alzheimer's the chance to live a safer, more normal life.
We're talking about people who are at the beginning and middle stages of diseases. The dogs actually help them go out of their home. Being able to walk and roam and do things is so important because that makes them feel that they're still alive.
It took 2 years to find the right dog breed and the right training. American-born Mirna Shibolet, a professional dog breeder with 42 years' experience, was brought on board. She chose the Smooth Collie, a shepherd dog, as the ideal breed.
First of all, they're very loving. They're very much people dogs. On the other hand, they are tough. They don't walk away if the Alzheimer's patient gets angry, if he forgets, if he doesn't pay attention, if he doesn't respond, they can take it and keep on working.
The careful selection process starts when the canine cadets are 6 weeks old, and they undergo an intensive 18-month training program, something akin to an elite unit or a canine A-team. So far, 12 dogs have been matched with Alzheimer's patients. With so few dogs making the grade, it is clear that standards are very high.
For example, we need Rolls-Royce, okay? We cannot use Mazda, we cannot use another cars. We need Rolls-Royce, and the best Rolls-Royce, because this is so hard project. The dog take responsible for every action.
I think the Alzheimer's project is the most difficult service task that a dog can do, because it demands a great deal from the dog. It has to be a dog that learns quickly, that's intelligent, that's adaptable, that's able to learn to function also independently if necessary.
The program is funded privately by patients' families, and at $15,000, it's an expense not everyone can afford. But the benefits are worth it.
All research shows that people who are active, it will slow the disease a lot. All that will help the person live, first of all, a better life with a much higher quality of life and for a longer time.
ברגע שיצאתי עם בלה, אז מצאתי קשר שוב עם האנשים. זאת אומרת, הייתי בודד לחלוטין, אבל סתם זה שהיא נמצאת. ואיתה יש לי את הקשר עם הסביבה. זה בונה מחדש סביבה שהיא פתוחה, שהיא טובה לי.
Attention from abroad has increased recently. The team is now working on setting up a second training center for service dogs in Melbourne, Australia, where the government has expressed interest. For them, this is the first step to setting up training centers and helping Alzheimer's patients across the world, with the help of a team of well-trained four-legged friends.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Welcome to another episode of the ICEJ report, and today we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Mashi El Shafai. Mashi, you are the International and Global Director of One Free World International. It's a great joy and honor to have you with us today. Welcome.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Well, Mashi, you have a very unique story. You are born in Egypt. You got saved in Egypt, and then you had a very unique and dramatic experience with the authorities in Egypt, which brought you at the end to Israel. Tell us a little bit about your life story.
I converted to Christianity in the age of 18 years old in Cairo. I built one of the largest underground human rights organization in Egypt. I was arrested in August 18, 1998. I was tortured severely by the Egyptian government for 7 days underground in the Egyptian prison.
Wow.
They put me in house arrest for another 8 months. They gave me the death penalty. I was able to escape out of the house arrest from Cairo to Sinai. In Sinai, I stole jet ski and I crossed the border from Taba to Eilat. I surrendered to the Israeli Authority. Through the intervention of Amnesty International, United Nations, and the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, I became a free man, and the International Christian Embassy took me in as one of their children under their wing.
I remember this was 13 years ago.
Absolutely, that's what 13 years ago, and I became member of the family. Like back home in Egypt, my family disowned me, but ICEJ gave me the family that I lost.
Oh, praise God.
Praise God.
Well, you moved on to Canada, and you established one of the most amazing human rights organizations in Canada, which is being a voice for the persecuted church in the Arab world. Tell us a little bit more about your ministry and what is One Free World International?
One Free World International, born out of the persecution, my personal experience. I always have a dream to become a human rights lawyer to defend the people that was in the same position like myself. Right now, we are an organization that helping the persecuted Christians, standing against the persecution, standing for the right of freedom of religion and the right of the minority, and as well against the rising of the combating anti-Semitism. We have branches in 28 different countries. We went to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq. We confronted these governments.
And sometimes you did this, you have been personally under attack. People shot at you personally.
Absolutely. I get shot at 7 times in the last 5 years. We did as well rescue missions on the ground. One of the biggest stories was a little girl by the name Niha. She was 2 years and a half. She was raped because her father is a Christian.
Wow.
And we was able to rescue her and her family to get them to Canada.
This is an amazing story. Well, everybody speaks today about an Arab Spring in the Middle East, and some people still have hope that democracy is spreading all around the region. Tell us a little bit more. How do you see the region? What is the real story about the Middle East today?
All of us against dictatorship. We all want the dictatorship to leave, but the problem, once you take a dictatorship out, you create a political vacuum. Who's using this political vacuum is the Muslim extremists, and that's what we see happening.
It's the Muslim Brotherhood.
It's the Muslim Brotherhood, and we see this happening in Egypt, in Tunis, very soon in Syria, and so on and so forth. And this is put the Christian minority, the Baha'i minority, different minorities in jeopardy and in great persecution, and it's also putting Israel in the front lines.
How many Christians today, as we are living, are under persecution and are under pressure?
There is one persecuted Christian every 3 minutes worldwide. Between 200 to 300 million persecuted Christians worldwide. They are in very deep dark night, but they still have the candle of the Lord. Our enemy have very strong weapons, it's true. Our enemy have very strong army, it's true. But we have the Lord Almighty.
Amen.
It's in my belief that they can kill the dreamer, but nobody can kill the dream.
You just heard about the situation of persecuted Christians all around the world. And I want to appeal to you personally today to make a difference for those people. Many of them are suffering. Many of them, they have families which are separated. And you can support them through organizations like One Free World International or through the International Christian Embassy. Why don't you write out a check right now to help the persecuted church in the Middle East and pray for them like never before? We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Remy Roth, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all your Israel updates.